Boom. What's up, everybody? How we doing? Woo. Happy Sunday, everyone. Chilling. Hope everybody's doing good. I am hanging out here, being a sweet bro. Just waiting for people to jump on. Um, I was going to. Um, I've made. I was talking to Chrissy Green today. I was talking to Chrissy Green, and I made. I made a small commitment to myself. I'm gonna try to keep these things to like 15 to 20 minutes. That's what I'm trying to do. I think it's a better use of time. And that way, I'm like forced to kind of like wham, hit it hard, and then that way people aren't forced to just sit and watch me for an hour. So good morning, happy Sunday. Hope everybody had a good week. It's been kind of crazy in my universe. Being a sweet bro. Oh, Miss Phyllis Hill. Hello. You guys, so I've got 3 of the Rev podcasts coming up this week. The season 1, season finale is with my dear, amazing friends, mentors, counselors, Dr. Glenn and Phyllis Hill. That will be awesome. That'll be coming up this week. Um, and then we're going to take, I think, a couple weeks and just sort of schedule out season 2 of the Rev Talks podcast. Thanks to everybody that's checked it out and stayed on top of it. Been kind of crazy, but we did it. We're doing the thing. So, man, so wild. I'm just going to give it just a few seconds more, and then I'm going to jump into this week. Dude, I just had the craziest conversation with Chrissy Green. We were just talking about like people. I was thinking about this a little bit. I don't really go into this very often. Um, but I was thinking about this in light of what I was going to share. I've been in Daniel for a little bit, but I'm going to take a quick break from that. In the wake of last weekend, Rev held its once a year Emerging Leaders Gathering conference, and we did it online. That was wild. What came out of it were a few things, and so what I wanted to share with you guys today is I actually I believe in my heart this is an actual like accurate prophetic diagnosis of a couple different things that I think are happening in us as people and in the church at large. So I actually think, and it's from Jesus, it's one of his parables, but I just feel like our little crew, we stumbled into something in the parables of Jesus that feels so remarkably on time for right now. And so I'm going to share that with you guys briefly. We're going to be in Matthew today. We're not going to be in Daniel. But one of the things I was thinking about was like, when we first started Rev here in Salt Lake, I remember there was a bunch of like young kids that would come in and hardcore guys and stuff like that. It was just rad. It was like all these little ruffian dudes in high school, and like it was just awesome. All these young like hardcore kids from all over were coming around. And I remember we were talking about it, and I had a mentor that would say to me in California, he said, Tommy, do you know what sin, what the Hebraic kind of picture of sin is? And I was like, no, because I'm used to, people talk about sin, and it almost is just this moral, like kind of imperative. It's this better than, worse than kind of thing. It's a judgment, right? That's what sin feels like. Sin, that word, people get weird about sin. I seem to get weird about it. And I was like, yeah, like what's the Hebraic picture of what sin is? And Dr. George, he would say, uh, imagine that you're an archer and you have an arrow knocked on the bow, and you pull the arrow back and you can see the target, and you're aiming the arrow at the target, and you let go of the arrow and it misses the target. It doesn't go anywhere near the target. And I was like, huh? And he's like, that's sin. You missed the mark. You literally were aiming for this, but you didn't hit it. I think it's called like hamartia or something like that. Anyways, so the word for it is interesting. But what I'd like to submit to you guys is like at the very beginning of the Bible, there's this thing in this the Eden story, the creation story. God basically says there's a choice that's made that fractures what could be perfection. There's a selfish choice. There's a fear-based choice in the garden, and it fractures the image of what could be perfection. And in that space, there's this hamartia. Thanks, Kashif. Love you, bro. That's what I was talking about. So the idea of we think of sinning, and a lot of times it means this like weird judgment and like you're wrong and you're bad. But I would just like to submit to you guys that when you're in sin, it's because you're fulfilling this initial thing, which is at the very beginning of the Bible, when the world is fractured, when we fracture the perfect world, when we choose fear and selfishness and cynicism, and we deny the reality that God is probably true or that God could be right and we could be wrong. When we deny that reality, what ends up happening in the garden is he says, you're going to sow seeds and plants, right? You're going to sow seeds and plants and trees and all these. You're going to sow seeds, but you're going to reap weeds. You're going to reap thorns and thistles. I'm going to do the right thing, but the wrong thing is going to happen. And any of us that have ever experienced that before, it's like, I thought I was doing the right thing. Why does the wrong thing keep happening? That to me is like what it feels like when you're in sin, like you're missing it. You think you're aiming at the target, but you're literally, every time you loose an arrow, it doesn't go anywhere where you thought it was going to go. That to me is an indicator, almost like a check engine thing of like, Tommy, where's your perception? Where's your spirituality right now? Where's your mindset? Where is God in your worldview? That's what I'd like to submit to you guys. There's a lot of us that are living in sin, and it's not that we're living morally inferior. It's that we think we're aiming at one target, but we are only hitting every other target, and we're missing it. There's leaders, there's pastors, there's disciples, there's people, there's all these humans, and they're doing the right thing, but the wrong thing keeps happening. I would just like to submit to you guys. I think that is because the power of deception, the power of sin is at work. We can end up in sin all the time. And it just means, I just want you to think about it just in terms of, I'm aiming at this target, but I just can't hit it. Just think about that. Are there areas in your life where you could be in sin, like you were aiming at one target, but you can't hit it? That's all. It's true for me. I'm sure it's true for other people. I'm saying that. So, okay. We were just talking about this, and I was thinking about the power of sin, that you literally can try to do the right thing and the wrong thing will happen. And to me, it's like, what is that? And the only place I can make some sense of it is almost like the cosmic order of God saying, I need you to follow my lead. And if you don't follow my lead and you're left to yourself, some good stuff's going to happen, but sometimes you are just going to miss it. And if you're not allowed to say, I missed it, you're just going to keep living in pride and just cycle through it a bunch of times until you get exhausted or you hurt yourself or someone else, and then you have to stop. So before you get too deep in sin, meaning you're missing the mark, stop for a second. Evaluate where you are. Okay, so here we go. Matthew 13. That's just my little treatise on sin. I don't ever talk about sin. I don't like it. I'm not a fan, not a huge fan of sin. I just find myself in it all the time. Anyways, okay, well, here we go. So we're going to be in Matthew 13 today. I just want to submit to you guys, if you find yourself in a place that feels like, dude, I'm aiming at one target, but I just am hitting all the wrong targets, I'd like to submit to you that you could just be missing the mark. You actually could be believing deception or lies. You could be full of pride or ego. You could be blowing it. Stop for a second and submit that to God and be like, help me find my way, lead me into the place that I should go. We all make mistakes. We all sin. All of us. We are not perfect. And so the perfect law that gives freedom, that comes from God. When we try to wrestle our own freedom way, we can really screw it up. And so I just want to submit to you guys, if you find yourself, and I'm saying this like way Christianese, if you find yourself in sin today, which I did like 50 times this morning, oh my gosh, Pray and ask for grace, ask for mercy. Jesus, I'm missing it. God, I am missing it today. I feel like I am like neck deep in sin. Like I just can't get out of my own way. Please forgive me. Release me from the obligation to try to live up to this thing because it's just messing me up. Please set me free today. That's just a really beautiful prayer to pray for our souls. It's very, very good. So anyways, Matthew 13. Here's my prophetic word. I think this is actually a prof moment that Jesus gave us. Jesus is so smart. His words are eternal. It says heaven and earth can pass away, but the word of God is going to live on. The eternal wisdom and knowledge of the divine is going to supersede all of our systems. And so in a moment like now, when there's these systematic things fighting, let's just look at the words of Jesus. He's so brilliant. He's a genius. The Holy Spirit is a genius. So this story was so cool for us. Our whole crew was like, whoa. But I just want to submit this to you because I think that this is actually can be a diagnosis of the heart condition of a lot of people in the church, and could be a diagnosis or a way of seeing things that might help set some of us free from the season that we've been in. You'll get it as I get there. And I got 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to do this really quick, okay? You guys, I'm 20 minutes or less. That's what I'm trying to do on these guys. I don't want to take an hour. I don't need to do that. Okay. So it says in Matthew chapter 13, this is verse 24 through 30. Jesus told them another parable. Okay. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." So what I want to submit to you guys is, there's the parable, the weeds and the wheat. I think that there's a lot of Christian people that were really solid, it felt like, in their faith for a long time, and they feel so disappointed, sickened, missed, misunderstood, lost. Like they just feel so frustrated and it's like, or they've grown. Like people were in one place with Jesus. Christianity made sense to them. Being a Christian was like a real thing. They saw wisdom and knowledge, or they felt mercy and grace. They felt connected to Jesus, to being a Christian, to being a disciple of Christ. And at some point in the last little while, say the last season or two of your life, it seems archaic. It doesn't seem to work anymore. It seems like there's other wisdom out there. It seems like everybody else has got a better answer. It seems like he's just like kind of played out. It seems like maybe this doesn't work anymore. It seems like maybe he's not who he says he was. Maybe there's like, why does all this crap keep happening? So here's what I'm going to say. What I've discovered in the Rev community, and I'm saying this just in general, what we said a few years ago was we wanted anyone that was in Rev, like all the leaders, we said, we want you. The goal of Rev is to preach the gospel and to share Jesus' story, his power, his virtue, his nature, the treasure that is Jesus. We want to share Jesus with the world because we think that it's worth it. We think that he is worth it, and we think that the world needs it. So we want to preach the gospel, the good news. We want to share the story of Jesus with the world. But there's a culture of people sharing the story of Jesus with the world, but they suck at life. They suck at living. They're really good at being Christians, but they're really bad at just like existing, having integrity, showing up on time, working hard, managing their money, taking care of their family, being honest with really what's going on. They're like great at being in the box, and they suck at life. And so what we've been saying for years now is I want you to do ministry. I want all the Rev kids to do ministry. I want your ministry to thrive, and or I want you to reign in life, right? I want you to reign in life, and I want you to rule in ministry. I want ministry to happen, but not in the absence, not in place of you actually learning how to do life well. So I'm just saying this is what we've been saying. So for the past few years, I feel like there's tons of people in Rev that got way better at doing life. And as they got better at doing life, they got not as interested in following Jesus the same, right? It's like they got better at existing. And so if Jesus was a crutch, they don't need the crutch anymore. So it's almost like some people that I'm seeing and hearing from, it's as if the Jesus that they knew is too small for them now. And so maybe they've outgrown him. It's like what it feels like to me is people have just seemed to like outgrown Jesus. Like they got so smart that now they're too smart for him. They got powerful enough in their own life that maybe they don't need his power anymore. They got informed enough or enough wisdom, enough instruction, or they've grown enough in self-awareness that maybe they don't need Jesus anymore. The best way to say this is Christine and me were talking with our marriage counselors, Dr. Glenn and Phyllis, and what Dr. Glenn was saying was there's studies that show when one partner goes to college and the other one doesn't, when there's just the gap in education of a couple years, the chances of them disconnecting and separating goes up to like 70%. I mean, it's crazy. Just by being more educated than your partner, you can disconnect from growth. We're growing apart. I think with self-awareness, with emotional intelligence, with soul healing, if you get more healed than your partner, if you become more self-aware emotionally than your partner, if you become promoted or more financially secure than your partner, there's all these separations that can happen in an intimate relationship like covenant. Covenant can be threatened if you grow apart. What I feel like I'm looking at is a whole culture of people that were deeply connected to Jesus. They were in covenant with Christ. And in the last handful of years, they've grown apart. I want to submit to you that growing is good. And I want to submit to you that the temptation or the reality of I was deeply connected to this person, but we grew in different directions, that's real. That's not real. What I want to submit to you guys is Jesus could be at the root of your growth, and you think you're outgrowing your covenant with Christ. I would like to submit to you that you're just outgrowing a small version of your Christianity. You're outgrowing an immature version of that relationship with Jesus. Colossians says that Jesus is the seat of all wisdom and all knowledge. Christ is everything you will ever need. We will never get too smart for Jesus. No one. It literally spells it out like so crazy. There's a book in the Bible where he basically says like, yeah, the way of Christ is foolishness to the world. It does not seem very smart, but it's the genius of God. It's the genius of God. Everyone wants power and miracles and signs. We preach him hung up on a piece of wood. It sounds stupid, and it's the wisdom of God and the power of God. There's something so countercultural and antithetical to man's power structures in the gospel of Jesus. I just want to submit to you guys, all of us have been in relationship with Christ for a long time maybe. But what I'm seeing is as people are growing in self-awareness and emotional intelligence, financial responsibility, they're growing in business, they're growing in education, they're growing in family, they're growing in all these ways. And so the Jesus that they used to know, whoa, lost my connection. The Jesus that they used to know doesn't seem to be working anymore. And so anyways, hold on one sec, I'm gonna pop back on. So, okay, I'm back. I don't know what happened. I kind of lost connection there for a second, but whew, give me just a second. I was like right in the middle of my thought. I was like flowing. I was like going for it. And all these people. Okay, sorry. I don't know what happened there. All my connection just like went away all of a sudden. Sorry, Facebook. You guys are holding strong. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. This guy. Just kidding. Okay, so what I want to submit to you guys is, and I've got like a minute left to do this. What you see in this parable is that there's a good man. There's a good man. That's what I want you guys to see. There's a good man who sows good seed in his field. He sows good seed in his field, and then everyone goes to sleep. And while we're all asleep, an enemy comes and sows bad seed, like deceptive, like choking out life, bad seeds in a good field. And then he leaves. He sows the bad seed and then he bounces. And so then the dudes wake up, and at a certain point in maturity, it says the wheat grew and sprouted heads, and then looked around and went, why is there bad stuff happening too? Isn't this your field? Didn't you sow good seed? Which is where I think a lot of us have grown in our relationship. We're looking at the world and we're going, God, this is your field. Why is there so much stuff that sucks if you're good? If you're good, why is there so much bad? If you're good, why is there bad seeds? If there's good seeds growing, why is bad seeds here? Isn't this your fault? I don't know who else feels like that, where you're just like, yo, God, I thought you were in charge, man. Like, I thought this was your field. Why is there bad stuff happening? Why doesn't it seem to be working the way that I thought it was going to work? Right? And here's what's interesting. Because the enemy messed everything up and then bounced, the only one that's accountable and around to listen to us is God. So we're blaming God for the other guy's work, which I didn't want to believe. I want to put it all at God's feet. When me and Chris have been losing people in our family, like I've been saying, when we had, my brother and then 4 miscarriages and then Chrissy's mom and then a nephew and we had my uncle and all these people died and we prayed and all of them kept dying. It's like, didn't you sow good seed? Isn't this your field? What's going on? What does he say? He says an enemy did this. And it's like, well, let's judge it right now. Let's fix it right now. And he goes, no. Because if you go after judging all the bad stuff and trying to uproot all the bad stuff without realizing it, you're going to uproot the growth that I'm doing in you as well. Be patient. They're going to grow together, but there will come a point when I will judge what's good and what's bad. But I think for us, there's a lot of us that we are overwhelmed with the fact that while good things seem to be happening, bad things seem to be happening. We have no idea what's going on. So put those two things together. That's what I'd like to submit to you guys. I think there's a lot of people that feel like they've grown apart from Jesus. And the very reason that they've grown apart is because the grace of God has been working in your life to grow at all. And so then you look back at the small version or some of these different beliefs within Christianity and you go, yeah, that's not good. That doesn't work anymore. You could be right. Or you might be missing it. The fact of the matter is you might just be outgrowing a small version of your Christianity. Jesus is always enough. He'll always be way bigger than you can handle. But I think a lot of us have gotten used to one way of being in relationship with Jesus. And if that begins to shift because we are growing, we don't know what to do with it. I'd also like to submit to you, I think the diagnosis of this whole thing right now is there's a whole lot of people in the body of Christ that feel as though there's weeds in the garden, and that's God's fault. And so because there's so many weeds in the garden, they can't even see the wheat that's been growing the whole time. And so what we did as a community was, I would like you guys all to stop for a second, especially if you're in the journey of being a Christian and trying to figure this stuff out. I'd like you to stop for a second today. And I'd like you to acknowledge and write down, what are the weeds that are growing in God's garden? In the church specifically, in the world. Power stuff, ego stuff, pride stuff, greed stuff, hatred stuff, fear stuff, whatever it is, because it's in the church. There's weeds growing in the garden of God. There's massive things. Power struggles, racism, sexism, bigotry, whatever those things are. What are the weeds that are growing in the garden of God that you're like, these are bad seeds. These should not be in this garden. I'd like you to take stock of them. Because if we don't give them a name, we're going to think they're actually way more numerous than they are in some ways. There's oppression and there's abuse There's narcissism, there's sexual immorality, there's sin in the garden of God. What are those sins? Write them down. Those are bad seeds. Those are not seeds that God sows. God sows seeds of faith and hope and love, mercy, grace, truth, holiness. These are good seeds. So I want you to take a second today and I want you to write down what are the bad seeds that you feel like have been sown in the garden. And I want you to give them a name and look at them. Those are real. Those are real things. And I don't think that those are from God. Because he's like, oh, an enemy did that. And then I want you to take a second and I want you to write down the good seeds that God has sown in the garden. Praise, community, connection, love, faith, miracles, intimacy, all of these beautiful things that are in the garden. And I need you to give those a name because I believe that there's a whole generation of us that we are overwhelmed by the sight of all of the weeds in the garden that we're missing the fact that the very reason we can recognize it is because we're growing. We belong in the garden of God. We belong in the garden of God. We're here. We're growing in maturity. We're growing in emotional intelligence. We're growing in a sense of justice. We're growing in a sense of holiness. And we're looking at things that shouldn't belong, and we have a right to say, those should not be here. Those are wrong. That's not what we want to be about in our generation. We don't deny it. We don't hide from it. We don't lie about it. Write them down. What are the things driving you insane about Christianity? Bet you a shiny nickel. Those are not from God. They're bad. It's okay. Call them bad. That's what they are. But don't miss out on the fact that there's all this good stuff that God's doing as well. Give it a name. Write it all down. What's all the beautiful things that God's doing? And then we get to decide. We get to create a value system for the next generation of Christianity. What do we want to be about? We don't leave the garden. We don't leave the garden. We just set our mind on the things that are beautiful, and we acknowledge and we recognize the things that are wrong, and we tell the truth about it. So my hope is, got a little preachy there for a second. My hope is that you can acknowledge the fact that God sows good seeds, and sin sows bad seeds. And bad seeds don't come from God like that. Good seeds do. If there's stuff in the church, in your Christian walk, in your discipleship, in the kingdom that's driving you insane, I need you to understand that there's a reason for that. Because it might be wrong, just totally wrong, and not the way of Christ, and not helpful, and not beautiful, and not holy. And Jesus may have nothing to do with that. Acknowledge it. We're not going to hide from it. There's massive problems in the church. We're not hiding from those things. But I need you guys to take stock because I feel like we're so used to all of the criticism and all the negativity and everything that's wrong that we're having a hard time seeing what's right and what's good. And I want to be someone that celebrates what God is doing in spite of all of the weeds. Why? Because he says, let them both grow together. Don't uproot what's good trying to get out what's bad. Church of Jesus, don't uproot what I am doing trying to get rid of what I'm not. Be patient in his way. Be patient in God's way of being patient. Remember, it says he's not slack. He's not paying attention. But it says he's patient, not wanting anyone to perish. So we can't lie about how good or bad things are. There's things that are wrong in the church. Wrong, bad, evil, wicked, deceptive, messed up. What are they? Write them down. Those are tares in the garden of God. What's the wheat? What's the good things? Let's be honest about where we are. If we're not allowed to acknowledge it and we're not allowed to tell the truth about it, that's why people are going to bounce because they don't think that God knows or that they can't even say it or that the culture isn't going to support them. And I'd rather be a part of a culture of people that goes, no, you're right, that's wrong. We should make no excuses for any of that. That's wrong, right? Yeah. Is it in you? Is it in me? Let's figure this out because I want to be about Jesus's way in the healthiest and the most beautiful way possible. But if I don't get to tell the truth about how screwed up everything is, then I'm out. I'm not going to lie because it's hypocrisy and I don't want to be a hypocrite. So anyways, hope that makes sense, you guys. Oh, okay. Matthew 13. Maybe I'll circle back around next week. But I like you guys a lot. So if you have any questions or anything, your assignment for this week is legitimately in the spirit of Matthew 13 to write down what is the wheat, what is the good seeds that God has sown. Praise, worship, community, friendship, love, prayer, miracles, the gospel, Jesus' story, the Bible, the Word of God, whatever. Write down everything good that God has sown in your life because of his existence. And then opposite that, write down all of the tares, all the seeds that seem like they were sown by the enemy when we weren't paying attention. What are all the bad seeds that are ruining the reputation of Jesus and his people? What are all those bad seeds that are driving you insane right now? Systemic or personal or moral, whatever those things are, write them all down. But let's give it a name. Because Jesus says there's a difference in the seeds that he sows and the seeds that the enemy sows. And if we confuse one with the other, we're going to blame God because he's the only one around for us. The enemy is bounced. He's dipped. He's not going to be accountable for the deceptive work that he's done. But God is, because he's a good father. He's going to stand around and he's going to let us yell and scream at him. And then he's going to help us figure this thing out. I like you guys a lot. All right. Pray words. Anything you guys need, hit us up. therevgatherings@gmail.com. You can hit us up at therevgatherings.com. Questions, concerns, criticisms, whatever. I like you guys a lot, and I will see you guys next week. Matthew 13. Wheat and the tares. Let's grow. That's what I'm saying. I like you guys growing as people. I want to be a generation of people that knows how to actually do all the supernatural, crazy good, gospel, justice, beautiful stuff. But I also am just like a good human. I can tell the truth. If I make mistakes, I own it. I just want us to rule. I want us to reign in life, and I want us to rock in ministry too. But I'm not going to be able to prophesy my way or preach my way out of all my character defects. I have to own my character defects, and I have to let God grow me. So let's not be hypocritical. Let's not be hypocrites in this generation. All right? We have an opportunity to develop something in Christianity that doesn't look like hypocrisy to the surrounding world. And that means we take stock of what's good and we take stock of what's bad, and we hold on to the good, and we really work to separate what's bad so that we can actually grow into something beautiful together. So anyways, I love you guys a lot. I'll see you later. I like you a lot. Bye. Huge fan of your work.